All the stuff that many of us have, it distracts us from the most important things, and we get down these pigeonholes of finite things like how much do I have, how big can I build, I need more. What is my life about, and how do I contribute to this society versus just what can I get from it?
Welcome to the Bucket List Life Podcast with Trav Bell, the world's #1 bucket list expert. Bucket List Life's mission is to help you get off the treadmill, stop Groundhog Days, hack your habits, and live a regret-free life. Because we know life's way too short not to live your bucket list life. So please welcome your host, Trav Bell, the Bucket List Guy.
Hey bucket listers, welcome to another episode of the Bucket List Life Podcast. And oh my God, what a guest today, Sterling Hawkins. How are you, buddy?
I'm good, Trev. Great to be with you. Thanks for having me on.
Whereabouts you in the world right now?
Denver, Colorado.
Yes.
Yeah, where it's slowly becoming fall and I'm not ready for winter. I can tell you that.
Hey, just quickly, we're going to get into your stuff. I love your stuff, and it's so relevant to our audience. We were just talking off camera. You're no matter what. I've got FOMO about, like, I should have the ticket before you kick it thing behind me. I've been thinking, get a neon sign, and, really. So now I really got to, order that. By the way, if you're listening to this, you're not going to know what the hell I just talked about. So behind Sterling right now, he's got the hashtag on his wall, hashtag no matter what, which we're going to dig into. And I love that. I love the hunting discomfort book that you've got going on. That's awesome too. Mate, with all that you do out there in Denver, Colorado and the US of A, what do you put on your incoming passenger card when you say coming to Australia like you have? And what do you put into that little box in terms of your occupation, bro?
Well, for the government, I like to keep it as simple as possible. And I tell them I'm a writer, which I am. But the core piece of the business and really what I love doing most is not just writing, but also speaking to audiences all around the world.
So author is a better way to get through customs unscathed?
Seems so. I haven't had any issue. And typically, I travel with a couple of books as well, and sometimes clients buy them for all the audience members. And it is kind of how I help refine some of my ideas. I think everybody works a little bit differently. But for me to understand, like, fundamentally what I believe and to build some perspective or point of view on the world, like, I have to write it down, because sometimes it makes all the sense up here. But when I say it or write it, I'm like, that doesn't make any sense at all. So it's kind of a great practice that I've developed, not just to sell books, to like figure out myself at the same time.
Yeah. Do you journal every day as a result?
Not every day, but often I do.
Okay.
Usually a couple lines in the morning, maybe something in the afternoon, like something I learned, someplace I was triggered. I'm all about those moments where, like, we feel discomfort. And when I find discomfort throughout my day, that is almost inevitably the thing I'm going to write about. Like, why was that uncomfortable, and what was the source of that?
Writing is also writing, going down the rabbit holes with your thoughts whilst writing is a form of therapy that I've seen happen really, really successfully. I come across a lot of clients, as do you, and I say, well, write it out. And then before you know it, a lot of stuff gets unpacked. We don't give it the credit that I reckon it's due. One of the exercises that really helped me was going through a coaching program years ago, and it was like a life coaching program, or it was an NLP program or something like that. And they said, find a word that's got a lot of ickiness about it. I'm like, what's ickiness? Just discomfort around. It could be money, could be debt, could be relationship, could be family, could be whatever. And then you start the sentence off with, let's say, money is, and ... and then just keep writing. And then the key is to keep writing until it goes flat or it pops. And then flip the page over and then write money is not, and keep writing until it either goes flat or pops. And it's absolutely phenomenal. Anyway, that's for the listener or watcher of this. Mate, you talk about trust.
Yeah.
This is awesome. But I want to, before we get onto that, I want to really go deep on your breakdown before breakthrough moment. You know, we call that an origin story, we call it whatever, but you know, what led you to be one of the top keynote speakers in North America there?
Thanks. Yeah. Well, I wish I had some of these writing tricks back in the day. I didn't have any of them. I wasn't hunting discomfort. I wasn't speaking. In fact, speaking was actually one of the things that scared me most in life. Like, I'd rather be in the coffin than giving the eulogy. Like,
Harry Seinfeld, right?
Yeah, exactly. Like, it was debilitating for me.
Same.
I didn't want anything to do with the uncomfortable and the uncertain. But I got admittedly a little bit lucky right out of college when I started a retail software company with my dad.
Right.
And we ended up selling it to this conglomerate, becoming part of this conglomerate in San Francisco, in Silicon Valley. And it became like the Apple Pay before Apple Pay.
Wow.
So a little fingerprint sensor sat next to the credit card terminal, I'm sure everybody's familiar with. So instead of your phone, all you had to do was put your finger down, your credit cards would come up, loyalty card, just like Apple Pay, only no phone. And Trav, I thought I was on this like moonshot success. I was like, business is easy. We had 700 people, offices all over the world, multi-billion-dollar valuation. We raised over 550 million US dollars.
Wow.
Which, is fairly common at the time. But this is early 2000s. We were like one of two companies globally that were at that level. So I thought, like, dust it off, Sterling, pack it in, pick out your private island and your private jet, and you're set for life, Here
comes the breakdown before here's the breakthrough moment. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, everything kind of went as planned until the housing market collapsed, 2009, 2010, globally. And we had built up so much internal infrastructure. When we couldn't raise more money, the entire thing ends up going bankrupt. So that's $500 million just gone.
Kidding. Over what time period?
Oh, it took 6 months from like you see the end to it actually is the end. Like, it happened quick.
6 months, so fast to go from that. So you couldn't raise more money to do more development and therefore more expansion. Is that how that works, that kind of business model? So were you running was the company making money?
We were making money, but we weren't profitable.
Okay.
And because money was so accessible for us, like, I found out there is such a thing as too much money. We weren't spending it as diligently as we probably should have been. And have you seen that movie, The Wolf of Wall Street?
About 1 billion times.
It was like a scene out of that movie. For listeners that haven't seen it, it's like models in the office, parties at the Four Seasons. The rest I'll leave to everybody's imagination. But I'm like, I'm living the dream. Like, business is easy. I got it handled. Until, we started to see some of the writing on the wall, and the whole thing came crashing down pretty quick.
Wow. So, this is sort of unrelated. Is that how a lot of companies, and I don't know because I've never been in that game, is that how a lot of the tech startups, they get the funding in, they carve off a slice of the company, sell it off, get more capital in, and raise capital that way? But still, was it Amazon took 10 years to make a profit or something like that? And so just getting, selling off chunks, raise more, and one day it'll make profit?
Yeah, that's certainly one approach. It's a common approach, especially in the tech sector in Silicon Valley. But it's not the only approach. And, I learned a lot through that period. And, I work with a number of different startups, either as a co-founder or investor, or just, helping them get off the ground. And, taking some of that experience that I have, I don't look at things as this endless supply of money. I think if we can get to delivering real value to real customers and achieve some level, or at least have line of sight to profitability, that's a much better, much more sustainable way to grow a business, especially since we never know what's around that next corner.
Yeah. In short, what would have you done differently in hindsight?
Well, I have two answers for that. One, from a professional perspective, is I think having so much money afforded us the luxury of not having to deal with hard and uncomfortable things. Uncomfortable conversations with our investors about the state we were in, uncomfortable conversations with our customers, what was happening with the business, and uncomfortable conversations internally about where we should be expanding, who we're hiring, what we're doing, what we're not doing. I think I look at it now, this isn't only in retrospect, where we had these discomfort defaults on autopilot. We were avoiding, denying, and surviving just about anything that we didn't feel like dealing with. And you can only do that so long until it catches up with you.
Yeah. Wow. And so the housing market shits itself, and then at 6 months, now what? What do you do? Like, what was your moves from there? Did you go bankrupt? And
well, I think this is where the real problem started, because the company did go bankrupt. They ended up selling off the assets. There was a bankruptcy attorney in court involved, and it did get messy. But what happened to me is, I told you I didn't start out wanting discomfort, so I continued to avoid it, and I actually made it worse for myself. So, I kept my penthouse apartment. I denied help from friends when they said, "Hey, Sterling, how you doing?" I'd be like, "Oh, I'm fine." I kept going out to these fancy dinners and fancy trips with my fancy friends, and eventually I run myself into all sorts of debt. I have to move into my parents' house. My girlfriend breaks up with me. It's like a sad country song of a story, because again, now at a personal level, I didn't want to deal with the hard things. It felt like we had everything that you were supposed to have to be successful. We had the money, we had the smart people, we had the patents, we had people working, 12, even 18 hours a day. Like, we were doing everything, and we failed. And frankly, it was so embarrassing for me, I couldn't talk about it.
Until now.
Well, now, exactly. We did turn a corner.
Buy the book, guys. The book is called Hunting Discomfort. Yeah. It's the stuff of movies. We joke about Wolf of Wall Street, but it's all too common. What do you gave up a penthouse apartment? Oh my God, mate. So where did it, that's the last
choice.
That was the last straw, I'm sure. Role of ego in that, male ego. Talk to me about that for a sec.
There was a lot of it. I mean, my whole identity was caught up in this company. I was hearing from people that I had known from earlier in my life, high school, college, that kind of thing, saying like, "Hey, Sterling, we saw you in the news again. This is awesome. And can I work for your company?" And, I'm on this trajectory. And so when the circumstances of the world change, I wasn't able to update my identity to shift my ego in a way to be able to keep up with it. And it made it probably 100 times worse. At the time, if I just confronted the pain, if I dealt with the thing, if I reached out and asked for help, I probably could have had a new job in, 6 to 12 months. But I decided to play it out across probably 5 years, where I'm sinking lower and lower and lower, and placating my own ego and trying to hang on to the past that I no longer had. And, like I said, eventually I bottomed out and hit a point where I had no choice but to confront it.
So talk to me about that, because we've all had that. It's not a case of comparisonitis. Mine's bigger than yours, or my breakdown is it's all relative. It's all in our own perspective is our own reality. So talk to me about that moment. And I think that's the real crux of this podcast. Is it's the learnings that come from that people can learn from. And so, how do you come out of that? Back in the parents' house at whatever age, ego's taken ego's been smashed. Yeah. How'd you get out of it? What'd you do?
Well, I remember that first night, like it's been seared into my memory. I'm staring at the ceiling, and I just think to myself, like, how I've been going about this isn't working for me. Like, my view of the world, the perspective, like how I've approached life isn't working. And I came to this very kind of intense crossroads. And this might be like a trigger warning for people, but I thought, like, either I'm not going to be here anymore, or I'm going to go after the things that I've been avoiding for years, or in some cases, my entire lifetime. And obviously I picked the latter. And part of the reason I did that is because I had incredible support from my family. And this thing my mom said, I just couldn't get out of my head. She said, and she's got all these crazy sayings, like maybe many people's parents, but the one that came back to me is the way out is through.
Oh,
The way out is through. And I was like, okay, that to me means you got to go.
that's Yoda shit. That one's Yoda. You know, that's beyond mom.
Right. Well, I think it's actually Robert Frost is the origin of the quote. But I was like, okay, to me, that means I've got to go through the uncomfortable, the uncertain, the painful, the embarrassment. Like, I've got to go through those things at a real level. And what I'm looking for is on the other side. And kind of with that as the first arrow in my quiver, so to speak, I kind of set out to go after the things that I was terrified of. Number one, funny enough, being a keynote speaker today, is public speaking was number one on that list.
I hear you. Exactly the same, mate. I was somewhat shy growing up until I got alcohol in me and whatever else, and fake confidence. But yeah, like I saw a speaker, you probably know him, Alan Weiss. I saw him speak as this brash New York Jew. I saw him speak, would have been 20 years ago, and he had no tech, no whiteboard, no nothing. Had us laughing and crying all in in the same minute. And I looked at him and I went, if I can do that, I can do anything. Because that was, and I've told him since. I've told him, like, it was you that helped me make a decision. Like, that was freedom. That was freedom from, that was discomfort 101. It was everything. But that was also the big domino, the first domino that I had to push over, which you've pushed over too, that affected so many other areas of my life. And yeah, I've had the pleasure of actually telling him that.
That's so cool.
Yeah. So the public speaking was one discomfort that you faced. What were some other ones?
Well, difficult conversations with my creditors, with my family, some of the borrowing situations that I was in. Since whenever I feel like there's like an elephant in the room, so to speak, like there's something in this conversation that nobody's saying, I'm like, well, we got to talk about that. And if people want, I am that guy, and I'll do it appropriately. Like, I don't want to trigger somebody else, but I do want to handle what needs to be handled. And then as I would hear about some of these different physical activities, mountain climbing, different kinds of races, and I would get that feeling in my chest where I think many people get it, like that nervous feeling of, oh, that's a little scary. I'd then be like, oh no, that's next on my list. So, marathon, ultra marathon, cycle across the Rocky Mountains here in the States, skydiving, shark diving. I just climbed Kilimanjaro a couple of weeks ago over in Tanzania, Africa. So, I'm getting after it still.
Unreal. How did you go on Mount Kili? How were you when you were at the top? Was it were you exhausted or were you how was the altitude for you?
What have you done it, by the way?
Yeah, well, I did it with Dad and nearly killed my dad, but
wow.
He didn't. We got to high camp, and he hadn't eaten. Mind you, we've done advanced base camp on Everest, on the Tibetan side, and I was screwed. Like, by the time I got to that was in meters. I was 6,500 meters, and Dad was fine, and I'm like, I was fucked. And I'm a surfer by trade, so I'm not good in hills. And I hear you love this. I was parked around the bowl, throwing up, really bad hangover feeling, and I looked north. 2 kilometers more north was the top of Mount Everest, and I just went, "No, fuck that." In my book, I've got chapter 13, which is the fuck it list, which is all the shit you just don't want to do. And I went from bucket list guy, climbing Mount Everest to, fuck it, fuck that. I'm not a... So, but when we got to Kili, it was flipped. I was fine, even though Kili was not as high, and Dad was pretty bad. So we had to get him off the mountain. I went to the top by myself with a porter. But a lot of people don't make it. How did you fare?
No, I did pretty well. I mean, I live out here in the mountains.
You live high. You're basically a Sherpa. Yeah.
I'm relatively acclimated, although, Kilimanjaro is quite a bit higher still than where I'm at. So I was doing pretty well, but to your point, we had two people that had to be helicoptered off because of hypoxia. Somebody else was sick and had to turn back. Like a fair number of people don't make it, even though it's not a technical climb. But I'll tell you, when we got up to the summit, right as sunrise is coming up, it was otherworldly. It felt like I was in heaven almost, because we're way above the cloud line, the sun's peeking through, and the view is just incredible. And it's something I'll never forget.
That's one of the memories that I have, just burnt in. It was just we were the first up. So I went up with a Sherpa or porter, and we were the first up in the morning, the first to see the sunrise, first to hit the sign, and it was just me and him. And my Camelback was frozen. I couldn't drink anymore. I was starting to, I was feeling faint. Needed to go to the toilet, but I never forget being up there basically by ourselves, just looking up, but the first to look over the hill and see the sun come up, and I can't get rid of that. I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah, it's incredible, and I think it's gotten a fair bit busier since you've been there. There were quite a few camps, quite a few people that were summiting in and around when we were. But I think that's the case with most of the 7 summits now. Like, it's gotten fairly commercialized where you see a lot of people doing it.
Yeah. So you're hunting discomfort. And is this so you're having the awkward conversations, elephant in the room stuff. I love that. How did you transition to really talking about and sharing this idea around trust?
Yeah, so I started to really examine my work, what I was doing, the conversations I was having, like a deeply reflective period for probably 18 months. It's one of those like, who am I? What am I doing in the world? What's important to me? And I started to understand discomfort's only half of the equation. I think most people would recognize the fact that discomfort is necessary for growth. It's not optional. But I think there's another piece of that I had been leaving out, and I think many have, which is the discomfort alone is not enough. It's when you open your mind to new perspectives, when you're in that discomfort, and maybe more importantly, soften your heart to some of that discomfort and let it move through you, that it leaves you forever and permanently free of it. And I was like, okay, well, there's an acceptance component. And in order to accept the unknown and uncomfortable, we need to make this courageous act of trust. We need to believe that going through these things is worth it for us. And so I look at trust at more of a macro level than kind of your rank and file trust, which is trust is this truly courageous act to see possibility in the unknown, where we maybe see the unknown, we only see fear, we only see dangers. Making that step, that intentional step to look at, well, where's the opportunity here? And how can I continue to take steps forward no matter what? Does that make sense?
And I love that. And there's some real depth to that. And we're not talking about trusting other people. Really, I guess we've got to trust ourselves first and foremost, right?
That's what it is.
And does this come for you? Does this come from distrust?
I think that's a great way to build trust. Yeah. And it does take time, and it is a practice, like cultivating a belief, like a real belief, not just like, oh, I've changed my mind for the day, but at a fundamental human level, I believe there is more potential in me. I believe there's more opportunity for me, and I'm going to take those sometimes really uncomfortable steps to be able to realize that. And so, just a caveat here. I'm not speaking like I'm on the top of the proverbial mountain. I'm on the climb like everybody else.
Yeah,
because it takes going through a lot of discomfort and cultivating that trust to be able to really stand in it when you need it.
So how can we trust ourselves more? Because we believe the stories that we've led ourselves to believe, which is, cobbled together a bunch of so-called situations, circumstances, events that have happened in our life, and put a story, wrap some meaning around it, created a story, and sometimes you repeat that story to yourself or out loud over and over and over again. It becomes an identity piece. And so how do we trust ourselves more. 'Cause I'm with you. We need to trust ourselves more. We need to take those baby steps. But how do we build it? How do we actually, I know you've got a system for how we can trust ourselves more, let alone everyone else, but we've got to start with us first, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's important to say, like, I'm not advocating going after discomfort and building trust for the sake of being uncomfortable. When I talk about discomfort, people are like, well, look at my relationships, look at my business, look at my bank account. I don't need more discomfort. I'm surrounded by it. But really what they mean is I'm living with discomfort and I can't handle anymore. And that's when we really need to look in the mirror. And I look for two things to identify the places where we have the opportunity to build trust. One is where we're triggered. Going back to what words am I triggered by? What kinds of conversations? What people? Like, what triggers me? And then secondly, where might I have limiting beliefs? Is it about myself, my view of the world, my view of others, my view on what's possible, my view on what I'm good at, what I'm not good at? But as we can start to identify those things, well, then we can start to go after them to be able to build trust. And I think that we live in a day and age, Trav, like it's hard to trust anything out here in the world. We've got AI of all sorts. We've got fake news and crazy media. There's not a video I watch every day where I'm like, oh, I can believe that. I always got this thing in my back of the head. Like, is that real?
Yesterday on my Instagram, I posted this, and it was from a fellow, a fellow Aussie who I really rate, Adam Hudson, shout out. And he said he posted this video of him talking over the top of it, of these pictures that in LA, in America, of course, you can rent, check this out, dude. You can rent a private jet setting. Like, it looks like a private, this is an influencer, if you want to be an influencer or impress people, you can rent a private jet set.
Not a real jet, like a TV set.
No jet in sight.
Nice.
Okay, it's the cabin of a jet, right? It's all gold-plated and a rock star. You can rent Lamborghinis by the hour. That's probably the oldest trick in the book. You can rent, and they do this for photo shoots, you can rent mansions by the hour. You can even rent, wait for it, you can even rent handbags by the hour. And we wonder why we don't trust each other, why we don't trust anything in the media. And then you got fake news and you got all the, deep fake stuff. And, mate, we got to trust ourselves more. I think that's the easy one. Like, does it go, before we can trust what we see online, the government? We won't go conspiracy theory too much here, but does it start with ourselves first?
I saw one of our peers the other day getting on, one of the social media channels and saying something like, with all this fraudulence in the world, don't trust anything. And wow. I sit back and I'm like, I know what not trusting anything is. That's called anxiety and depression. And I had it.
God, yeah.
If you don't trust anything, that is a slippery slope to not having a very fulfilled, happy, results-oriented life. I think there's actually only one class of things that we can trust. And to your point, those are things that come from ourselves. Infinite things that have nothing to do with the world, like love, joy, gratitude, peace. Like, as we can orient ourselves to those things that are true, maybe ultimately true, then that's how we can start to cultivate that trust in ourselves and break through this distrust in the world.
You're so on point. That is so well put, because we just cannot go through life not trusting anyone, not trusting anything around us. That does lead to anxiety, depression. I know it. I know it too well. But it starts with us to rebuild trust in ourselves. This is on the same level as being grateful, writing gratitudes, building faith in ourselves and our word, and integrity. Integrity, be the change that you want to see in the world, Dalai Lama. And so, Gandhi, sorry. I might have butchered that quote.
That's right. It is Gandhi, yeah.
One of those dudes. Your mom might have said that as well, going back to...
She probably did. I mean, she borrowed great quotes from a lot of people.
Yeah, but she says it differently. So you change it 10% and it's yours. Look, so you've really built that trust in yourself. How has that ripple affected out into the world?
Well, like I said, I'm on the climb, and I think it's kind of shifted my perspective. I, like many, have spent most of my life only paying attention to this world of the finite. How much money do I have? What does my home look like? How many locations do I have in my business? How fast can I scale? And that's certainly something to pay attention to, but I had lost sight of this other, really more important thing. German-American theologian Paul Tillich called it the infinite things or ultimate things. And it's, again, those things like love, joy, gratitude, and peace. And I've developed this practice of when I'm uncomfortable, when I'm like in the unknown, I call on some of those feelings. Like, I can feel love in this argument right now. I can feel gratitude when a client goes a different direction. And what that's happened is it's transformed not just my results, being a keynote speaker, doing pretty well in the business. It's transformed my relationships. But most mind-blowing to me is it's transformed my experience of life. Like, it's much more open. It's more expansive. I feel more things. I'm more excited. I feel more joy. And, it's holistic in nature. So it kind of permeates everything.
This is one of the reasons I love doing these podcasts. One, connecting to like-minded people, but two, this is a coaching session, man. So thank you very much. And I know your fee is pretty high. So I'm stoked. I'm getting more guys. Hopefully, if you're watching and listening to this is coaching session 101, and the invoice is in the mail, mate. Is that what we're saying here?
I'll send it your way. No, that's not fair. I've learned plenty from you, and even in this conversation, I've got a couple of notes here about the new writing prompts I'm going to use.
Oh, well, there you go. No matter what movement, love this. I mean, if you're watching this, guys, on YouTube, on the socials, we go to hashtag no matter what. What is this? No matter what movement.
So back when I was bottomed out at my parents' house, I started using it as a personal mantra. And it was really simple things like, I'm going to get out of bed tomorrow no matter what. I'm going to call a creditor no matter what. I'm going to go to the gym no matter what. And, it started to be this rally cry that I used for myself. And then when I started sharing it with other people, they were looking at me and kind of the transformation I was going through. And they're like, how'd you do that? And I'd be like, oh, well, I just started doing things no matter what. And we started to build out the system. And it turns out that this process we cultivated, really for myself initially, what works for me has worked for everybody. So it's become a group of hundreds of thousands of people from all walks of life, all different religions, different kinds of businesses, different backgrounds, different just about everything. A group of people that have committed to realizing their potential in big ways and small ways, and hunting the discomfort and building the trust necessary to do so.
Beautiful. And that dovetails into your book too, like bestseller, Hunting Discomfort, 5-step path for achieving. What is that? The 5-step path for achieving.
What I started to build out early on, and now it's backed up with all sorts of research and brain science and client work and everything else. But the first piece is what we've talked a lot about, which is hunt discomfort. Don't live with it, but go after the unknown and the uncomfortable. Next, get a tattoo. Not a real tattoo, maybe. Although it looks like I have some catching up to do with you. I don't have any tattoos at the moment.
Yeah,
there you go.
Branding 101 there. But
yeah.
There's a tax deduction too, funnily enough.
But it's what I mean by that is, like, how do you commit in ways where there's no going back? Like, really putting yourself on the line for something, and then surrounding yourself with people that can hold you accountable, using challenges as your pathway forward. And then, as we've been talking about, the most important thing is accepting whatever situation you're in so that you can trust what's coming next.
Love that. Awesome. I'm going to change tact here a little bit. I want to know, you've done a lot of crazy stuff around the world. This is the Bucket List Life podcast. And I want to know 3 things that have been on your reverse bucket list. That's it. For people that don't know, we've got two types of main bucket lists. We've got a reverse bucket list and a future bucket list. Future bucket list is what everyone, puts on their bucket list, what they want to achieve. But reverse bucket list is everything that you've done. So three things is if they were on a bucket list all the way along that are the highlights. And what it does is get its present, makes us remember. It's a gratitude list, a big gratitude list. So three things that you've done in your life, Mount Killy might be one of them, that are on your reverse bucket list. What do you reckon they are?
Kilimanjaro for sure. That's been on my list, like actual bucket list for a while. So I was really grateful to check that one off the list. Shark diving with great whites off the coast of South Africa. Did that several years ago. And cycling across the Rocky Mountains was another big one.
Boom. Love that. Love that. And for those people that are like, nah, don't want to do any of that, that goes on the third list that I spoke about earlier. That's your fuck it list. That's shit that you just do not want to do. And you don't want to hunt that level of discomfort, maybe. So...
Well, and to your point, maybe it's not for you. Like, again, I'm not advocating discomfort to be uncomfortable. And there is a very important but sometimes subtle distinction between danger, like actual danger, and discomfort. And starting to align with some of those feelings in ourselves, I think, can orient us to, here's the bucket list things that are for me, even though they're a little scary. And this stuff, fuck it, I never want to do it.
Yeah, that's it. I had a 3-hour surf yesterday, and it was really good. It was big. I like big surf, and
that'll be next up on my bucket list.
Yeah, and then literally only 10 meters away, some fins came out of the water.
Whoa.
Yep. And every surfer, we were all there, and there was a bunch of fins, and they didn't look like normal fins. They look like they're not. The kind of fins that you don't want to see.
Oh,
so the whole shark diving thing, and but then it sort of came up. A big fin came up slow, and we like fins that go like that. Like come out of the water and do the. We know that's a dolphin, right? But this one came up a little bit slower, and sort of did that on the surface. So real quick, it was what I call a sholphin. That is the cross between, it's what you go, a shark dolphin. Yeah, so it was a dolphin, but you initially think it's a shark.
Oh.
And
did your heart skip a couple of beats?
It always does. No matter, even if it is a dolphin, there's always that shark. Oh, no, dolphin. So anyway, relevant story, maybe not. 3 things on your future bucket list. What are the big items, 3 big items that you want to tick off before you kick the bucket?
Well, like we were talking about, I'd like to join you on the list of people that have made it to Everest Base Camp. Maybe not the summit, but base camp. Let's see. I want to go to New Zealand, and I want to live with a tribe in Africa for at least a month.
Nice. There we go. Might share that with you. Yeah.
I spent a little bit extra time in Tanzania after the Kilimanjaro climb and got to spend some time with the Maasai people there. And, maybe you've done the same, but they're living in these dung huts, like 10 people in a hut the size of my bathroom. And they are the happiest, most grateful people. And I'm like, I need to learn from these people. Like they know something, they have something embedded in their psyche and their culture that I want a piece of. So, I'd be really grateful for the chance to be able to do that.
It's interesting. Those people that have the least, seemingly the most happiest. I went to, a few years ago, Vanuatu. Why? I wanted to see a live volcano on Tanner Island. I did that.
Yeah. Nice.
Which was extremely unsafe. In the middle of the jungle, but it was
your discomfort line. You blur it.
Yeah. There was literally only a sign. There was no guardrails, no nothing. And it was literally only a sign. You love this. After a 4-hour like hardcore full drive through the jungle, you come up to this huge volcano that is erupting all the time, and the only safety thing that was in sight was this big old sign that said "Think Safety." That was it. Okay, and our guide took us up to the edge, and he said, "If it really explodes, don't look up. just run, but don't look up and behind you. Just look forward, because people get injured by tripping over the boulders in front of them because they're looking back. I'm like, is this a real conversation we're having right now? Like, he goes, and then he pointed, he goes, yeah, that wasn't there 2 days ago. And he pointed to a boulder that was the size of a Beetle, a Beetle car.
Oh, wow.
What do you mean, bro? Like, he's like, think safety. All right. So, all right. Good tip.
Wow.
I went to Vanuatu because it was rated the happiest country on earth, the happiness index. And then it went from Vanuatu to Bhutan, and I think that's still the happiest people on earth. And it's interesting, Tanzania, Maasai are rated no choice, no problem. So they don't have, ignorantly bliss. They don't have all the choices that we have, or choose not to engage, and therefore are happy. Us, with all of these choices, all of these problems created by all these choices, are seemingly the most unhappier kind of, range of people. So, fun fact. There you go.
Well, I think all the stuff that many of us have, it distracts us from the most important things. And we get down these pigeonholes of finite things, like how much do I have? How big can I build? I need more. Whereas the Maasai people, at least the tribe that I spent some time with, well, they didn't have anything. They didn't have some of those distractions, and they were spending time with each other and having conversations and thinking about, like, well, what is my life about, and how do I contribute to this society versus just what can I get from it?
Yeah, love that. On that note, mate, thank you so much for being on the podcast. Bucket List Live podcast is richer because you've been on it, and the no matter what movement, hunting discomfort, it's just so in our wheelhouse here. Those that are watching, listening, I'm sure you got some absolute nuggets out of what Sterling shared today. Mate, how can people connect with you?
Really easy. My name's Sterling Hawkins. Website sterlinghawkins.com, and pretty searchable on all the social platforms. So really appreciate you, Trav, and thanks for having me on. I'm looking forward to future conversations. We'll have to do this again.
Definitely. Thanks, mate.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for listening to the Bucket List Life podcast with the world's #1 bucket list expert, Trav Bell. For more great content, go to www.thebucketlistguy.com. We'll see you next time.